Wargaming can be an expensive hobby. Let's save money with a little bit of green stuff. Games Workshop makes a huge amount of awesome miniatures. Generally, the regular troops for an army, regardless of the game, end up being significantly cheaper than the elites or the heroes. This makes sense. Generally, you don't need as many elites, and sometimes they're made out of different materials, just meaning the cost is different, so that they have more details. Unfortunately, if you're making a project on a budget, these elites can really hurt the bank account. It's a bit of a bummer when your captain, who's pretty much just a regular guy without a helmet on, costs $35 when you can get 24 of your troops for $85. An even bigger bummer is when the models that you want to add into your army are out of production, meaning that they're going to cost even more than what Games Workshop was selling them for on the second-hand market. I just want to be able to play a game using these models, so that's where my solution comes in. Green stuff. Green stuff is a two-part epoxy putty. It begins its life as a yellow and blue strip, and unsurprisingly, when you mix yellow and blue, you get the titular green. There are a whole bunch of places that sell green stuff, and as far as I'm aware, they're all the exact same. So just get the largest amount of green stuff for the least amount of money. Personally, I prefer tubes which have the blue and the yellow completely separate. Otherwise, where the blue and the yellow are touching, they can sometimes solidify and leave chunks in your putty. No one likes chunks in their putty. There are a bunch of fancy sculpting tools you can go out and buy, but this video is about saving money, so I'll be using my hands and any other tools that any hobbyist will have laying around. Once you've mixed up your green stuff, you have a working time of a few hours, so there isn't much of a rush. To mix it up, I just twist it together, squish it, and twist it together again and again until it's a nice even green. Green stuff can be a bit difficult to work with. It loves to stick to any dry surfaces. Now, this is a good thing because you can stick it in the right place on your model, but it also means that it loves to stick to your hands and tools. Have a little tray of water on hand to moisten your tools and hands so that you can control when and where your green stuff sticks to. Now, I am by no means an expert at using green stuff, but for simple conversions, you really do not need to be. The first green stuff conversion that we're going to approach today is to create a goblin prowler. These models are a part of a commission project, and it was important for the project that the costs were kept at a minimum, and getting 6 of these guys was just going to blow the budget out of the water. So instead of buying them, I decided let's convert them with green stuff. This is an official prowler model. Let's look at the key design features that we're going to try to recreate with our green stuff. It has a massive hood and a really big axe. Now, in-game, the models also have the ability to use throwing weapons. This isn't represented on the existing models, but it will be a cool thing to include in our conversions. I start out by mixing up my green stuff. It's really easy to mix too much, but that's not the end of the world because you can always use it on something else. Generally, conversions don't take anywhere near as much volume of the good stuff as I expect. I've had these 2 sticks of green stuff for months, and I am nowhere even near scratching the surface of how much there is. I started out with an archer model that at one point looked like this. And I have a bunch of spare goblins. These guys are so cheap on the second-hand market, and I have so many of them that I didn't even charge my client for these models. I started out just by cutting off one of the arms and reposing it by gluing it back on, then made a little sheet of green stuff and I chucked it on his head to make a hood. Pushed it around and manipulated it with my blade, and it only takes a few minutes to get the hood looking pretty good. I used a tiny bit of wire to make a shaft for his future axe, and used a blob of green stuff with a little bit of sculpting to make a hand holding this axe. To make the blade, I just cut a disc of green stuff in half and I stuck it on. After finishing off my first prowler, I did this with 5 more. One of them is holding that throwing weapon that I was talking about. These goblins got a super fun paint job with purple cloaks, green skin and gold armor, and they got based on the Conquest creation Dwarven Halls bases, which are available from the web store. This is them stacked up against the official prowler models. I think they fit the part really well. They might not be the exact same, but for gaming purposes, they're very clearly prowlers. So let's talk about the costs of these prowlers. The regular models cost $21 for 4 when they're available, but at the moment they are way more than that. These Moro goblins you can find for about $1 each on the second-hand market. Throw in a couple cents of green stuff and you've got yourself a pretty sweet deal. Let's move on to another example of saving money with green stuff. This Grimhammer captain looks sort of lame and he costs $35. When you can get 24 warriors that look pretty similar for $84, that means this captain costs the same as 10 troops. These Grimhammers are $3.50 per model brand new. Because of their rules in-game, you don't really need more than 18 of them, so you're always going to have 6 left over. That's because they have a special rule from the King Thrall, they can give them a strength bonus.
Yeah.
These models are so badass. I imagine that they use their massive hammers to forge their own armor and the picks on the other side to mine their minerals. I don't like the trope of commander models in wargames just not wearing a helmet. So unlike the prowlers, I'm not going to try to emulate the official model. Instead, I'm going to be doing my own interpretation of a captain, which obviously means that he needs a cape. I mean, how else would you know he's a hero? This started once again by mixing up some green stuff and flattened it out and glued it onto his back. Then I teased out a fur pattern and now he matches with the other lords in the dwarven army. After a lick of paint, he looks totally badass and is the perfect captain for 1/10 of the cost of the official model. This was also for a commission army. You'll see it in a future video about resin versus plastic miniatures. If you're interested in getting your army commission painted, contact me through my website and I'll give you a quote. So, as I said earlier, I might not be the most experienced green stuffer in the world, but someone who is my boy Young Duke from Kim's Painting Corner on Instagram. He was making a Mordor army for the Middle-earth strategy battle game, and he wanted to use 16 black Numenorians. Not only are these models super weird looking, but they also cost $35 for 4, which means that 16 would be $140 on some janky models. Instead, he used his god tier green stuff skills to sculpt over the much cheaper Army of the Dead models. These guys cost $70 for 24, but are a part of the starter kit, so they're readily available on the second-hand market. And he used a couple cents worth of green stuff. His results after painting is an amazing, totally unique force of models for a fraction of the cost of the original models. Green stuff is awesome. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've learned something from this video, and hopefully you're motivated to pick up some of the yellow and blue gold and join me on the journey of saving money with green stuff.